The stage of America's Got Talent sparkled under the brilliant lights, casting a magical glow over the entire auditorium. The crowd buzzed with energy, a mixture of excitement and curiosity filling the air as the night unfolded. The host, with his signature enthusiasm, stepped forward and raised the microphone. "All right, folks, we've seen some incredible talent tonight, but now it's time for something truly unique. Please give a warm welcome to one of our youngest ever contestants, 5-year-old Emma." The audience erupted into polite applause, though there was an undertone of skepticism rippling through the room. From behind the heavy velvet curtain, a tiny figure emerged. Emma, dressed in a simple white dress that seemed to glow under the lights, clutched her hands nervously in front of her. Her small, shiny shoes tapped lightly on the stage floor as she walked, her braids bouncing with each step. Her eyes, large and innocent, scanned the room with a mixture of awe and apprehension. Some audience members leaned in, whispering to each other. "She's so little. What could she possibly do?" one murmured. "Is this even fair?" another chuckled softly. The judges exchanged amused glances, their polished appearances reflecting years of experience and perhaps a hint of impatience for what they assumed would be a short-lived performance. One of them, a man with a sharp suit and an even sharper tongue, leaned into his microphone with a smirk. "Well," he said, his voice dripping with mock encouragement, "let's see if she can remember her lines." The remark drew a ripple of laughter from the audience. Emma stood still, unfazed by the momentary ridicule. She adjusted her grip on the microphone that the host had handed her, its size comically large in her small hands. She took a deep breath, her tiny chest rising and falling, as if gathering not just air, but the courage of 1,000 performers before her. The room grew quiet, almost unnaturally so, as if everyone collectively realized they were about to witness something they couldn't quite predict. The spotlight focused on her, isolating her from the vastness of the stage, making her appear even smaller. But in that moment, Emma's expression shifted. Her nervousness melted into a calm resolve, her gaze steady and unwavering. The silence in the auditorium was palpable, every breath held as the audience leaned forward, waiting. Emma finally lifted the microphone to her lips, and with a voice pure and steady, she spoke her first words, breaking the tension like a gentle ripple across still water. The first notes of the instrumental track began to play, soft and haunting, like a whisper from a distant memory. Emma stood still, letting the music wash over her, her small frame illuminated in the golden glow of the spotlight. The judges watched intently, their earlier amusement fading into curiosity. One of them, a woman with a warm smile but a critical eye, leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. The audience sat in silence, an unusual calm settling over the massive theater. And then Emma began to sing. Her voice, clear and angelic, filled the room with a raw, emotional power that seemed impossible for someone so young. The song, about the pain of losing loved ones and the hope of finding them again, was deeply personal. Each note carried a story, and each word painted a vivid picture of longing, love, and resilience. The lyrics spoke of a child wandering through a world turned upside down by war, searching for the comforting embrace of parents who were no longer there. As Emma sang, her face told the story as much as her voice did. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, her small hands gripping the microphone tightly as if it were the only thing anchoring her to the stage. The audience, initially skeptical, was now captivated. People began to lean forward in their seats, drawn into the emotional intensity of her performance. A man in the front row wiped his eyes discreetly, while a woman further back reached for her partner's hand, squeezing it tightly. The judges, too, were visibly moved. The previously skeptical judge who had mocked her earlier now sat back in his chair, his expression unreadable. But his eyes betrayed a flicker of something deeper, perhaps regret or admiration. The warm-smiled judge wiped away a tear, her hands subtly brushing her cheek as she whispered something to her neighbor. Even the most stoic among them seemed to soften, their pens forgotten on the table. Emma's voice soared during the chorus, carrying the audience to an emotional crescendo. Her vibrato was tender yet powerful, filling every corner of the room. Each note seemed to linger in the air, wrapping around the hearts of everyone present. The sound was more than music. It was a call to feel, to remember, to hope. By the time she reached the final verse, a hush had fallen over the theater, so profound that you could hear the faint hum of the stage lights. Emma's voice faltered slightly, not from a lack of skill, but from the overwhelming emotion she poured into her performance. And somehow, that small crack made it all the more real. As Emma reached the final, trembling notes of her song, the room was utterly silent, as though the entire world had paused to absorb what they had just witnessed. She stood still, the microphone clasped in her small hands, her wide eyes scanning the audience with a mix of vulnerability and quiet confidence. The last note faded, leaving only the faint hum of the sound system and the collective, stunned silence of the room. For a moment, no one moved. Even the judges seemed frozen in time, their pens idle, their expressions softening from skepticism to awe. And then, like the first drops of rain before a storm, a single pair of hands began to clap. It was hesitant at first, uncertain in the heavy silence, but soon others joined in, until the entire auditorium erupted into thunderous applause. People rose from their seats, one after another, until the standing ovation engulfed the room. Emma blinked, as if trying to process the wave of support crashing over her, and for the first time that evening, a shy smile broke across her face. The camera panned across the audience, capturing tears streaming down cheeks and hands clasped tightly over mouths. In one corner, a young mother held her child close, whispering something in their ear. In another, an elderly man wiped his glasses, his eyes red and glistening. The applause didn't stop. It only grew louder, fueled by the emotion that Emma's performance had ignited in every person present. The judges, too, were visibly affected. The sharp-tongued judge, who had earlier mocked Emma's potential, leaned forward in his seat, his hands clasped tightly as he stared at her with an unreadable expression. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer, almost reverent. "Emma," he began, pausing as if searching for the right words. "I have been on this panel for years, and I've seen performers twice, 3 times your age, struggle to move an audience the way you just did. That was extraordinary." His voice cracked slightly and he cleared his throat, quickly looking away. The judge with the warm smile placed a hand over her heart, her voice trembling as she spoke. "Emma, your voice is like nothing I've ever heard. But more than that, the way you told that story, it felt like you carried the weight of 1,000 hearts in your song. You are an old soul in a little body, and what you've done here tonight is nothing short of magic." Her words were met with an even louder roar of applause, and Emma's cheeks flushed pink as she bowed her head slightly, her braids brushing against her shoulders. The audience began chanting her name, "Emma, Emma, Emma!" The sound echoed through the auditorium, growing louder with every second. It wasn't just applause. It was a declaration, a moment of shared humanity that Emma had created with nothing more than her voice and her courage. She looked out at the sea of faces, her small figure standing tall against the massive stage backdrop, and in that moment, she seemed larger than life. As the applause began to settle, the host stepped back onto the stage, visibly moved. His usual energetic demeanor was replaced with a quiet respect as he approached Emma, kneeling slightly to bring the microphone closer to her height. "Emma," he said gently, "I think I speak for everyone here when I say that was absolutely breathtaking. Can you tell us a little about the song you just sang?" Emma hesitated for a moment, her small hands still gripping the microphone tightly. Her voice, soft but steady, carried through the silent room. "I sang that song for my mommy and daddy," she began, her words causing a collective intake of breath from the audience. "They're not here anymore, but I know they're watching me from heaven. My mommy used to sing it to me when I was scared, and my daddy always said it was our family's song." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. The camera panned across the audience again, capturing tear-streaked faces and hushed whispers. A child in the front row buried their face in their parent's shoulder, while a couple in the middle of the theater held each other tightly, their expressions somber. Even the judges looked visibly moved, their usual composed exteriors cracking under the weight of Emma's raw honesty. The host, visibly choked up, paused before speaking again. "That's such a beautiful story, Emma. Can you tell us more about your parents?" Emma nodded, her braids bouncing slightly. "My daddy was a soldier," she said, her voice tinged with both pride and sadness. He was really brave and always told me to never give up, no matter what. And my mommy, she was the best singer in the world. She always said music could heal hearts." Emma paused, her eyes glistening as she looked down at her small shoes. "I hope I made them proud tonight." The audience erupted into another wave of applause, this time mixed with cheers and cries of encouragement. "You did," someone shouted from the back, their voice breaking the tension and prompting a ripple of agreement from others in the room. Emma smiled faintly, her cheeks glowing pink under the stage lights. The judges took turns offering their thoughts. The sharp-tongued judge, now fully humbled, leaned into his microphone. "Emma, I owe you an apology. When you walked out on this stage, I underestimated you. I thought, what could a 5-year-old possibly do? But what you've shown us tonight is far beyond talent. It's heart, it's courage, and it's a connection to something deeper than any of us can explain. You've taught us all a lesson tonight." His voice cracked again, and he cleared his throat, quickly glancing down at his notes to regain composure. The warm-smiled judge chimed in, her voice filled with emotion. "Emma, your parents are absolutely proud of you, wherever they are. You've touched every single person in this room, and I know that your song will stay with us long after tonight. You're not just a performer, you're a storyteller, and you've given us a gift we'll never forget." The third judge, usually stoic and reserved, nodded solemnly. "I've seen many incredible performances on this stage, but few have made me feel the way I feel right now. Emma, your bravery and your ability to channel your story into that song, it's remarkable. You have a gift that goes beyond your years." The crowd erupted again, chanting Emma's name with renewed energy. She stood quietly, taking it all in, her small frame exuding a quiet strength that belied her age. The host turned to the judges. "Well, I think we know what the audience thinks. Judges, it's time for your decision." The crowd roared in anticipation as the judges prepared to cast their votes, the energy in the room almost electric. But before the votes could be cast, the sharp-tongued judge raised his hand to pause the process. "Wait," he said, turning back to Emma. "Before we do this, I want to say one more thing." He leaned forward, looking directly at her. "No matter what happens next, you've already won something far more important than this competition. You've won the hearts of everyone here tonight. Thank you for sharing your story with us." Emma nodded, her eyes shimmering with gratitude. The host smiled, looking back at the camera. "All right, folks, this is a moment we'll all remember forever. Let's hear what the judges have to say." The lights dimmed slightly, and the audience hushed, leaning forward as the decision loomed. The stage was set, not just for a vote, but for a moment that would resonate far beyond the walls of the theater. The lights dimmed, leaving Emma standing in a soft golden spotlight at the center of the stage. The audience held its collective breath, the energy in the room charged with anticipation. The host, now back in his usual energetic tone, turned to the judges. "All right, it's decision time, judges. What's it going to be?" The first judge, the warm-smiled woman, was the first to speak. She leaned into her microphone, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Emma," she began, pausing as if to gather her thoughts. "What you've done tonight is nothing short of extraordinary. You've reminded us all why we fell in love with this show in the first place, because of moments like this, when someone comes along and changes everything. For me, it's a resounding yes." The crowd erupted in cheers, the sound reverberating through the theater as Emma smiled softly, her tiny hands clutching the microphone tighter. The second judge, the stoic man who rarely showed much emotion, nodded thoughtfully. He glanced at Emma, his usually sharp eyes softened by the weight of her performance. "Emma," he said, his deep voice carrying across the silent room. "I don't just see a talented singer in you. I see a light, a strength, and a story that the world needs to hear. Your voice has the power to heal, to inspire, and to bring people together. It's a yes from me, too." The crowd's cheers grew louder, with people jumping to their feet in celebration. Finally, the sharp-tongued judge, the one who had doubted her the most, was the last to speak. He sat back in his chair for a moment, the weight of the moment apparent on his face. Slowly, he leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, and fixed his gaze on Emma. "Emma," he began, his voice quieter than usual, almost tender. "When you walked onto this stage, I'll admit, I didn't believe in you. I thought, she's too young. This is too big for her. But you proved me wrong in every way possible. You reminded me why I do this job. You reminded me that sometimes the most unexpected moments are the ones that stay with us forever. Tonight, you've made history, not just on this stage but in our hearts. It's an emphatic yes from me. The room exploded in applause and cheers, louder and more fervent than ever before. People clapped, stomped, and shouted Emma's name as golden confetti began to fall from the ceiling, swirling around her like a magical rain. The host stepped forward, his voice barely audible over the celebration. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for Emma. She's going through to the next round." Emma's smile widened, her eyes shimmering as she gazed out at the audience. She bowed gracefully, her small frame almost lost in the sea of confetti, but her presence was anything but small. The camera zoomed in on her face, capturing the pure, unfiltered joy and gratitude that radiated from her. As the applause continued, Emma was joined on stage by the host, who knelt beside her and asked, "Emma, how do you feel right now?" She took a moment, her voice soft but steady as she replied, "I feel happy because I know my mommy and daddy are proud of me." Her words sent another wave of emotion through the room, and the audience's applause somehow grew even louder. Backstage, Emma was greeted by the production crew, fellow contestants, and her guardian, who hugged her tightly. The camera followed her as she looked back at the stage one last time, the lights and confetti still sparkling in the background. It was a moment that would be replayed in countless highlight reels, a story that would be shared far beyond the confines of the competition. The episode ended with a montage of Emma's performance, her smile, and the emotional reactions from the audience and judges. The final shot lingered on her tiny figure walking backstage, holding the microphone tightly, as if it were a symbol of everything she had achieved that night. It wasn't just a performance, it was a moment of connection, of shared humanity, and of hope. And as the credits rolled, the audience at home, just like the one in the theater, knew they had witnessed something truly special. Emma's journey had only just begun, but she had already left an indelible mark on everyone who had the privilege of seeing her shine.